Here it is, the new Supra, now with a manual transmission. And honestly, it's kind of growing on me. Since the new Supra is finally, a Supra, we thought it was time to update an old classic. Today, on Overdrive, the Toyota Supra. And no, I'm not gonna do the thing. Is that a Supra? Is that a Supra? Is that a Supra? Yeah, those are Supras. Let's go. There is this hierarchy of tuner cars. Over here, you have your baseline Civics, the entry-level budget cars that people learn how to work on. Then there's the mid-tier, right here. The stuff you need some cash for and some real know-how. WRX, Lancer, 350Z. And then you got the top tier, and two names dominate the fast import world: Skyline and Supra. That's why they were the best cars in video games. Why the race-oriented games like Gran Turismo used the Supra and the GTR as flagship vehicles. And why a little-known movie called Fast and Furious used one as the real hero. But the Supra didn't just pop into existence and instantly become everyone's favorite. In fact, when it came out, it was kinda slow. And that's not to say that Toyota couldn't build a fast car. I mean, the 2000 GT was, well, fast for its time, and it sounded amazing. It's just that the Celica XX, or Celica Supra, was just a Celica with a slightly bigger engine. It was the late 70s after all, and no one was really getting it right, which is why these things didn't last very long. The Mark II, however, was starting to pull ahead of the pack. It had 178 horses, which is respectable for the mid-80s, and it drove decently. The Celica Supras are honestly both fine cars, but the Mark II is definitely the better Celica. When you drive a Mark II, you feel like you're driving a well-built vehicle. And there's this polite word that automotive journalists use when describing a car that's old. The word, it's engaging. As in, since there really isn't enough power to correct mistakes, and there are old, worn-out mechanical links everywhere, you have to almost always be doing something. You're either flipping it into a lower gear to come out of a corner, or you're fighting that steering wheel into it. No power steering, maybe power brakes. And that describes a Fox body Mustang perfectly. It is fighting you. It's engaging. And the Supra of the time, it wasn't like that at all. It didn't have sloppy connections. It had a power band that felt pretty natural, and it actually was a pleasure to drive. And this is me judging it by modern standards. Like a Mark II Supra drives just fine compared to something like a new Miata. Imagine you're in the 80s and your choices are Camaro, which drives like a Camaro, or you could be driving something that drives like 40 years ahead of its time. People were starting to catch on. The Mark III Supra followed shortly after, and this time, Toyota was confident enough to drop Celica from the name. We got stiffed in the US though, since Japan got the real JZ Supras, while we only got the non-JZ ones, but they still are really a decent car. In fact, of all the Japanese sports cars that you could own from the 80s, the Mark III Supra is probably the easiest one to live with. It's bigger, which makes it a little less nimble than the Mark II, but that extra power more than makes up for it. More importantly, unlike say the RX-7 FC or the Mitsubishi Starion, you could still regularly find parts for a Mark III Supra. Just ditch the old 7M block, a 1JZ fits right in, and you won't have to worry about head gaskets. The most important thing to happen to the Supra name though, was that Toyota took it racing.
Shoulders at this stage as he moves down the towards Sutton's corner.
Where it was pretty much a flop. I mean, the Supra was heavy and made less power than its rivals like the Ford Sierra Cosworth and the E30 BMW. And by the time Toyota engineers got it together, a little car called the Skyline GTR had just entered the touring car world. And it's not dishonorable to lose to Godzilla in a fight, but it did mean that, at least during the time, the Supra wasn't a contender. And because in the States we never got the 1JZ, the Supra was compared unfavorably to the Corvette. Yes, it was a little bit cheaper, but if you were being cheap, the Nissan 300 was way more affordable and faster. Behind the scenes though, Toyota was developing something wicked. They were all offended because the Mark III didn't do awesome, so they poured their heart and soul into a new platform. It's perhaps the biggest evolution to take place in a car, period, when the Supra went from decent sports car to downright hero. You see, when the Mark IV was released, it was a huge step up from the Mark III. It was a huge step up from just about anything in America, to be honest. The Mark III was a decent sports car, but it was mostly just the 300ZX bought by people who were afraid of change. Mark IV, however, was a Corvette slayer. In 1993, the twin-turbo 2JZ GTE Supra was the fastest Japanese car you could buy in America. And yes, I'm including the Acura NSX. That's not even the most controversial thing I'm going to say. I'm about to tell you that the Mark IV Supra kinda sucks. Yeah, even though I called it one of the best Japanese cars you could buy. It's big, a bit heavy, and really likes it rough. Honestly, a Viper's easier to throw around than a Supra. The Soarer, or Lexus SC, is the direct predecessor to the Mark IV. And it's not a race car, it's a luxury touring car. So when you stick stiff springs, a rear seat, and classically heavy Toyota wheels on it, it becomes a bit of a beast to drive. Then there's the name. Even though we all now know what the Supra is, in the 90s, it was just an expensive car from a brand that made the Camry. Was it faster than a Corvette? Yes, it was. Did people who want to go fast buy it instead? No, because they didn't know what it was. They bought a Corvette. It did have one very important thing. That one thing redeemed everything bad about it. It had an engine that was easy to tune and could handle anything. Which means that the people who like to make power started to smell what Toyota was stepping in. Oh yeah, baby. Tuning fever was just starting in the US, where car clubs went from old guys with even older cars to meets full of energy drinks and laptops. And at a tuner meet, building horsepower is king. And honestly, a lot of times, the rest of the car doesn't even really matter. When's the last time you went to a car show and heard someone get super excited about a new set of coilovers? Or get geeked out about slotted rotors? Nah, it just doesn't happen. Big turbo though, everyone knows. It means awesome. So, a platform that you can build near infinity power that was still reliable. Step aside RX-7 and shove it off 3000 GT. You're cool, but you're not 500 horsepower with nothing but a laptop cool. Pushing along the inspiration in the underground was Toyota's success in racing. And you all know the Tom Supra, like the one from all the video games, and there was this great feedback loop. Hardcore modders would put upgrades on their cars, which would find their way onto racetracks, where then engineers would tweak something, and it would find its way back onto the street. At the height of a growing underground car culture, the Supra was becoming an icon. And guys, steal the show with this 10-second Supra tee, or snag it as an 18x24 poster. It'll look great everywhere. And both are limited to the first 100 orders. If you want to hop on the meme train, is that a Supra? Is it? Well, this tee could be yours, and it adds 5 horsepower to any ride. I've linked to all of them down in the description. Go shop to your heart's content and join the Ideal fam. Now, the Supra reached its peak when one of the underground tuners, a dude named Craig Lieberman, let a new little film outlet use his personal Supra as the star in their new movie. It's called The Fast and the Furious. It's not totally fair to say that the movie is the sole reason that so many people love the Supra, but it's probably the reason that so many people love the Supra. I mean, for many car enthusiasts, it introduced them to the idea that you can take a car and with a janky computer and some elbow grease, turn it into something that destroyed Ferraris. Unfortunately, by the time tuner fever had gripped the nation, the Supra was already being pulled off shelves. We, who love horsepower, loved the Supra. Normies, they bought Corvettes. For 2 decades, we kept buying the Mark IVs, forcing the Japanese Golden Age to go on forever. Until something strange happened. Toyota decided it was time to build a sports car again, and the Mark V Supra was unleashed upon the world. People were hyped. At least until people started driving them. Then the hype died really, really fast. YouTubers and car journalists alike hated on it.
This is the all-new 2020 BMW Supra.
It's a BMW in a Toyota jacket.
It seems to me like it's more a BMW than a Toyota.
It didn't come with a manual transmission. It didn't look particularly good, and there wasn't even a wing. That's how we felt too. We just didn't understand how a company that is flailing, like Nissan, could figure out how to build a new 3-pedal enthusiast car. But the largest car company on earth just couldn't. It was a total flop. The truth is that people who buy new cars, so yeah, not most of us, actually really like the Supra. It's outselling the Z4 and is on track for a record sales year. Even though everybody and their mom wanted so badly for it to bomb, and for Toyota to realize that they made a horrible mistake. Well, it turns out that the largest car company on earth does know a thing or three about making cars. Not only was the Mark V better than many people gave it credit for, Toyota has basically addressed the biggest complaints. It now comes with a manual and a big wang gang spoiler. If you want to modify it, there are a million of different options. And oh yeah, it keeps getting faster. We said it in a video recently that the new Z was going to be faster than the Supra. Well, this is me officially saying that we seem to be wrong about that too. Gazoo Racing can build a damn fast car. And I think that if you want a car that's fast, reliable, and probably going to go up in value over time, the future classic manual Mark V Supra is the car to get. And before you ask, yes, it does hurt me to say that because I don't want to like a knockoff BMW. But I have to respect the amount of work Toyota has done to prove the Mark V is a worthy successor. And on that bombshell, back to you in the comments. Agree or agree to disagree? Let me know down below. Or go watch us talk about other cars on this Ideal Overdrive series, right here. I'm Brad, this is Ideal. Subscribe, turn on that notification bell, and promise me one thing, keep living the ideal lifestyle.